I don't really know what kind of person this makes me. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or to be told I did the right thing. I just need to say this out loud because lately, it's been eating me alive. I never imagined I'd marry an addict. I was focused on school, determined to carve out a life of stability and security. I didn't want to wonder if I could afford groceries or if my kids would grow up too fast because they saw too much. And yet somehow, that's the life I landed in, the one that I was trying so hard to avoid. It doesn't matter his name, but I met him through a friend, someone that I trusted. She said he was a good guy. What she didn't tell me, at least until much later, was that they had met in rehab. When I found out, she just said, "I thought you two would be a good fit. Plus, he was clean." And at that point, he was clean, and he was charming. God, he was charming. He knew what to say and when to say it, and he made me feel important, loved, and needed. I fell way too fast, and I willingly ignored the red flags present. The mood swings, his job instability, how every burden slowly fell on me. Love makes you see a version of someone that doesn't always exist. We got married while I was still working toward my degree. I picked up extra shifts at a local diner at night. He bounced from job to job. When he was sober, things were manageable. He was motivated, helpful, even tender. But those stretches of sobriety got shorter. First, it was weed, then kratom, then pills, and finally, heroin. I was pregnant with our daughter the first time I found heroin in our apartment. I remember staring at the needle and thinking, no, this can't be right. He cried when I confronted him, swore that it was a one-time thing, said it was the stress, and he said that he'd stop. That was the first lie that I chose to believe. Our son came along a few years later. By then, I was juggling school, now with 2 kids, along with a husband who slipped in and out of his own skin. He'd vanish for days on end, come back strung out and trembling. Sometimes he was physically present but completely gone. Other times, he was just angry, pacing the house, shouting for no reason, throwing things up against the wall. Once, he pushed me while I was holding our son. I hit the wall so hard that it knocked the wind out of me. He sobbed after this, begged me to forgive him, blamed how he was behaving, all on the drugs. Something that now I've only grown to partially think is true. Eventually, we couldn't keep up with rent. The little money we had disappeared right into his habit. I was too ashamed to ask anyone for help either. His parents had written him off. Mine weren't in the picture. So we bought a half-finished van conversion from a guy in the neighborhood and moved in. While that van meant at the very minimum a roof over our head, it was miserable. Scalding hot in the summer, freezing in the winter. No privacy, absolutely zero comfort. I told myself that it was all temporary, that we were going to get back on track. But I think you can tell that we didn't. That spiral only seemed to deepen. What's worse is that my kids cried every night. My daughter missed having a room and a bed of her own. My son, who was too young to even know what was going on, just clung to me more and more. All I could do was try my best, even though I was drowning too. I tried to keep them warm, tried to keep them fed, all keeping one eye on him and the other on the door. One night, things hit a boiling point. He was irritable, twitchy, and I knew something was off. I actually remember finding a needle in his coat pocket that day, but I didn't confront him. I never did anymore. That night, he just seemed to snap. We were arguing in hushed tones while the kids tried to go to sleep. I don't even remember what the fight was about. It wasn't as serious to me as it was to him because before I knew it, he pulled out a gun on me. I think it was a small black .22, but when one of those is pointed in your face, you don't really see the size. He waved it around, slurring nonsense, and if I'm being honest, I absolutely froze. My son was in my arms, and my daughter, who was woken up by the commotion, was now cowering behind me. I did everything I could to shield her. As her cries and screams started to pick up, it didn't even seem that he noticed. That moment absolutely broke something in me. All the love I ever had for this man vanished into something cold and clear, and that was fear. I realized he could kill us all, if not on purpose, then by accident, all while in a haze of fury and drugs. But I also knew I couldn't call the cops. I didn't trust that they'd keep us safe. I'd seen what he could do when he felt cornered, and even if they managed to arrest him safely, he'd eventually get out, and I have no doubt that he would come right back to us. I didn't have anywhere else to go, no family to run to, so I knew we were stuck. A few days later, he used again. I didn't see him shoot up, but by the time I saw him slouching in the back of the van, I could see it in his eyes. He was pretty much gone. Within a few minutes, he was now lying on his back, eyes fully shut, sweating through his shirt. I was just glad that if he was that out of it, I knew we weren't going to be fighting for the next few hours. That's when the noises started. Gagging, choking noises. I looked over just in time to catch his body convulsing as a small stream of vomit flew from his mouth. I knew then what was happening because I had seen this twice before in our relationship. The first time he overdosed, I saved him. The second time too. I kept Narcan in our family first aid kit for that very reason. I knew the drill, but this time, I hesitated. I sat there frozen, clutching the first aid kit, and for a few seconds, I didn't move. Because in that moment, I knew my life would be infinitely easier if I didn't save him. No more walking on eggshells. No more screaming, hiding, or pretending. He would just be gone, and that would be that. But I couldn't. Not because I loved him. Like I said, that had dried up. But because I couldn't live with the knowledge that I stood by and did nothing. That I had the power to save someone and simply chose not to. So I did the right thing. I turned him on his side. I cleared his airway. I put the bottle of Narcan to his nostril and sprayed. Then I waited. He sputtered, twitched, groaned. Then he finally opened his eyes. All to say nothing. No thank you, no type of recognition. He just rolled right over and passed out again. All I could do was sit there and quietly cry. Not because I felt any sort of relief, but because I knew that I had just handed my captor another lease on life. And now I'd be paying for it. This all took place earlier this year. We're still in that van, still scraping by. He's alive, and I'm still his wife. Nothing changed after that. Not really, at least. He doesn't even remember the overdose. Or maybe he does and just doesn't care to tell me. Either way, he's still using, still raging, and still pulling everyone down with him. I go through all the motions. I make food, I change diapers, I apply for jobs, for housing, for any scrap of a better life. He sleeps, gets high, picks fights, then tells me that I'm lucky he's still here. Some nights, when the kids are asleep and he's passed out again, I find myself staring at that first aid kit. I know in my heart he'll overdose again, probably soon, and I know I'll be the one to save him again, because I'm not ready to carry that kind of guilt. I don't know if I ever will, but certainly not yet. Every time it happens, though, it chips away a little more of who I used to be. Every time I save him, I feel less human. I'm not looking for anyone to tell me I'm strong, or brave, or good, because I know I'm not. I'm just stuck. Trapped with someone who is already gone in every way that matters. Trapped by obligation, fear, and the hope that one day, maybe I'll find the courage to break free without breaking myself in the process. Until that point, this is my life. You'd be surprised how much people trust a stranger with a squeegee. 5 years. That's how long I worked as a professional window washer in a small, quiet Swedish town. It's the kind of cliche town where people still leave their doors unlocked, keys under mats, and apparently trust workers to come in and out without ever giving a second thought. On paper, my job was simple. Clean the windows, move on to the next house. And most days, that's exactly what I did. Wake up early, meet the crew at the warehouse for a cup of coffee, get our assignments, and head out for the day. Our boss liked to mix teams up each day so we could all get to know one another. A sort of forced camaraderie. But every now and then, luck would shine down on me. I'd get the occasional solo job. Even better, a solo job where the client wasn't home. Just me, a quiet house, and usually a note saying, "Key under mat. Thanks." Those were the days that I absolutely lived for. See, there was something about walking into a stranger's house completely alone. It stirred something inside me. I won't call it something dark because I don't think that it is. Although I guess that's a matter of perspective. I don't know what it says about me. Likely nothing good, but the moment I knew I was alone, that's when the excitement would start to build. Of course, I'd start with the windows. Always. Get them done quickly and thoroughly. Then I'd put a ladder somewhere near the front door. Just awkwardly placed enough that someone would have to move it in order to make their way fully into the house. That way, if someone came home early, I'd hear them long before they actually got into the place. It bought me enough time to reset the scene. Because after the windows were done, that's when I snooped. Not to steal. Never to steal. It was just about curiosity. The kind that sits in your gut and dares you to cross a line that you shouldn't even be looking at. Medicine cabinets, nightstands, drawers, closets, all the private places that people think are safe when they leave their homes. I'd open things up carefully, memorizing how each item sat so I could return it to its exact position. No disturbances after uncovering people's private worlds. You wouldn't believe what people hide. And even more, what they don't. I remember finding a diary tucked away in the back of a linen closet. The woman wrote about how she was cheating on her husband with her own boss. Another entry had her wondering if the baby that she was currently pregnant with was even her husband's. Another time, I found a teenage boy's laptop wide open on his desk. Pornhub. Paused mid-video. No password even needed to awaken the laptop. Just right there, like he was planning on coming back to it later, and never thought someone like me might see it. I found sex toys in drawers, handwritten letters never sent, a loaded pistol under a mattress, which in Sweden is nearly unheard of. One couple had a full-on sex swing mounted in their bedroom, like not even hidden, just plain as day, like it was a lamp or a chair. They knew someone was coming into their house that day, and I don't know if they didn't expect me to go into their room, or they just didn't care. Maybe they wanted it to be seen. That was the thing. Every house was a little different. Some were cold and sterile. You can tell no one talked much there. Others were cluttered and lived in, filled with love or chaos or a dose of both. And I had a front row seat to pretty much all of it. There was a sort of pattern to my snooping. First, the bathroom, mainly because people leave the most telling things there. Prescription bottles, grooming habits, sometimes even little notes on mirrors. Then I'd move on to the bedrooms. If I was lucky, the houses would have both adult and children rooms to explore. Kids' rooms were oddly revealing. The boy with a ninja star made of 3 kitchen knives welded together, that one stuck with me. There was never a single moment where I felt like I was doing something right. I knew it was wrong, but I wasn't hurting anyone. That was at least the twisted logic that I fed myself. I wasn't taking anything. I was just looking, just learning. And learning became intoxicating. I started to crave those solo jobs. I'd offer to switch assignments with coworkers. I'd even pretend to be sick on days when I knew the route would stick me with a partner. Anything I could do to get back into someone's house alone. If I'm being real, the guys that I worked with probably just thought I was a loner. But I wasn't lonely. I was obsessed. One house I remember vividly. It belonged to an elderly couple. They weren't home when I arrived, but they left a note and the key, per usual. The house itself was still stuck in the 70s. Brown wallpaper, carpeted bathroom, a kitchen with pretty much solely yellowed appliances. But it wasn't the decor that got me. It was the letters I found. Dozens of them, hidden in a shoebox in the attic crawl space. They were letters from the husband, all addressed to someone named Elin, written during the war. Pages and pages of longing, regret, and clearly love. But Elin wasn't his wife. This was someone else, someone that it seems like he never forgot. And yet here he was, living out his golden years of his life in a house with a woman who wasn't Elin. I left that day a little sketched out. I think about that guy sometimes. How he probably smiles politely at his wife over coffee, but keeps his heart in a dusty shoebox above the insulation. I found people's homes or museums, and I was the quietest thief of stories that anyone could have imagined. There was never a time where I got caught. No one ever came home early. There were no cameras or no close calls even. But the risk was always part of the thrill. The idea that I could be seen. That someone might realize I wasn't just cleaning the windows. I was peeling back the curtains of their lives. But like all addictions, it got harder to justify over time. I began to ask myself, what was I really looking for? Was it secrets? Shame? Or just proof that everyone is as messed up behind closed doors as I sometimes feel inside? Eventually, I left that job. Once again, not because I got caught, not because I had some big moral awakening, just because I felt full, like I'd seen enough, learned enough, or maybe deep down, I was scared I was going to cross a line that I couldn't walk back from eventually. I never told anyone about this, not a single soul until you lucky people. I don't think I'm a bad person, but I know what I did was wrong. And the worst part is, I can't promise I wouldn't do it again if the opportunity ever came up. Because inside of me, there's some insatiable curiosity that just doesn't die. So, if you've ever left your key under the mat, if you've ever paid someone to come into your home and do a job while you weren't there, I think I've just given you something to think twice about. Because not every window washer is just there to clean the glass. Some of us are there to look through it. I made this Reddit account for one reason and one reason only. To talk to you. I won't name names, but you'll know this is about you. You used to read stories like this all the time, remember? You'd bring them up, laugh at how wild they were, and even play the podcast versions on car rides. So I figured maybe it's fitting you find this the same way you found all those other twisted little tales. Only this one isn't fiction. It's real, and it's about us. I'm 29. You're 31. We were friends for 5 years. Dated for 3. I loved you hard, and honestly, I thought you were the one. I believed in you more than I believed in anything else. Even when things got hard a few months ago, I held on. Even when we started fighting, when it felt like we were tearing at the seams, I stayed. I kept hoping we'd find our way back to each other, but you had already started walking away. The Saturday of that wedding, I remember every hour, every breath, like it's almost seared into me. We had plans. I asked what time you'd be coming over so we could get dressed and head out. I even offered to pay for your Uber to me. All you said was, okay. And then nothing. For hours. I kept checking my phone, messaging you, calling. I even checked your location. It said you weren't home. You were parked in some random lot that I didn't recognize. And then after that, your location went dark. Gone. I had a full-blown panic attack. My chest tightened, my head spun. I thought something had happened to you. I paced my apartment like a madman, and I called you every 15 minutes to no response. For 6 whole hours. Then at 9:30 p.m., you finally picked up. Your voice was soft, concerned even. You asked, "Are you okay?" At that moment, I crumbled, and I cried into the phone asking, "Are we okay?" You told me your phone died, said you were out with old school friends, that you had lost track of time, but that everything was fine. And I believed you because clearly I was stupid. I loved you. I didn't think you were capable of lying like that. The next day, I was a shell due to my own anxiety and depression. I couldn't even get out of bed. You came over and held me like nothing had happened, but something felt off. You moved differently. You smelled different. But I brushed that off, told myself it was all in my head. That morning, I put your Apple Watch on the charger, and that's when I saw the messages to your school friend, sent at the exact time that we were on the phone. The message said, "He was growling in my ear." Another one said, "I had to cover up my hickeys like I was in school." This stopped my heart. I stared at those messages hoping that I misread them. But there they were, stamped with the time 9:30 p.m. That's when you came out of the bathroom and I noticed the faint marks on your neck. When I asked, you said you had scratched yourself. I let that conversation slide, but later that day when I was taking you to work, I brought it all up. The messages, what you had said. You said you were lying to your friend, that you had made up some grandiose story to seem interesting. I didn't believe you, but in my heart, I wanted to. So, yet again, I swallowed it. Let it fester inside of me. Then came your birthday. I was at your house, surrounded by your family, our friends, even that same school friend who laughed with you about the cheating. I drank too much. I needed that liquid courage because I knew what I was going to do. During the festivities, I told you that I wasn't feeling well, that I wanted to go lie down in your room. I knew that you kept your iPad, the one that I gave you, underneath your pillow, and most likely unlocked. I didn't just find proof. I found the whole damn story. You weren't with your school friends that night. You were with the guy that you play Call of Duty with. The one who always made you laugh just a little too hard. The one that you'd asked to play just a little too often. I saw everything. The hotel plans, your flirty messages, the screenshots of those hickeys, even you telling him that we had broken up. What made it even colder was that I found some messages sent at 9:45 p.m., which happened to be the same exact moment that I was begging you on the phone to reassure me that we were all good. I found messages between you and your school friend too, laughing about how you got away with it, cheering you on, telling you just how smart you were for lying to me. That's not it though. I found flirtatious chats with multiple Uber drivers. Just weird. I found out the ring you always wore, the one you said belonged to your late grandmother, was actually from your ex. And yeah, I found messages to that same ex, where once again you told him you were single and that you'd always love him. There were messages with your Call of Duty guy that would make anyone's stomach turn. Shameless. Even sent on Thanksgiving Day while I was standing in your kitchen, carving turkey and thinking about how grateful I was to have you. I found selfies that you sent to other guys, selfies that you had taken while we were out together. I remember the nights, the outfits. I remember thinking you looked beautiful. I didn't know you were dressing up for someone else though. And yet, at different points in our relationship, you talked about marrying me. You wanted to wear white in front of our families, while your phone lit up with messages from people you were clearly cheating on me with. So here's what I did. Before I hit post on this story, I sent screenshots of everything. To the friends who still think you're a good person, to the family members who'd disown you if they knew. to the rest of the people in your Call of Duty group who you play with, the ones who never knew about your double life, to all our mutual friends, to your school friend who sat there grinning at me during your birthday party like she didn't help you burn everything down. They all know now. Every single one. I'm done playing the fool. Done crying into phones while you whisper lies and text your lovers. I'm done loving someone who thought my heartbreak was funny enough to be shared in a group chat. You made this bed. Now you get to lie in it. And when you read this, and I know you will, remember, you could have just told the truth. You could have been honest, but you chose betrayal, lies, and now you're just another story on Reddit.